Hey everyone, this is Cameron from Renegade Animation on renegadepopculture.com. If you like what we do, please give us a like, a follow, favorite our episodes on Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to us. We are everywhere. Make sure to share our episodes out, and if you like what we do, consider supporting our Patreon. That way we can keep doing what we love, and that's talking about the unhinged world of Adult Swim and Smiling Friends. And now, on with the show.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Renegade Animation on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host this evening. Joining me, as always, is the animation guru himself, Cameron.
Howdy, howdy.
And boy, this is going to be an unhinged episode because we're talking about Smiling Friends. But before we get there, let's kind of unpack the world of adult animation, or at the very least, Adult Swim, which is honestly in a weird place right now. Not just with its own programming, but how it's kind of swallowed up Cartoon Network for better or for worse.
It's for worse. I mean, like, overall, I'm not happy with the fact that Zaslav killed Cartoon Network and now everything has to be on Adult Swim. Like, Cartoon Network exists as like a zombified corpse, but you can tell that Warner Brothers Discovery is putting all their chips on Adult Swim, the shows that they make, and some of the stuff that is coming out for it. Like, there's still stuff for kids coming out, but you can tell their overall audience focus right now is the young adults, older teens crowd. Not that that's a bad thing. Hey, know your audience. But it's weird because you can't just change Adult Swim to, gosh, if I say something, I'm sure Zaslav is going to be like, make the change. So I don't want to curse it or jinx it. But it's weird how so much focus is now on the programming block that used to rely heavily on Family Guy rerun and its own weird subculture of animation made on extremely tiny budgets using the pre-made assets from the stuff that Hanna-Barbera used to make, or just whatever they could with Flash animation and what have you. And then we watched that grow into having its own hit live action and its own original adult animation that usually isn't 30 minutes, but are usually in the 15-minute range.
Mm-hmm.
And still be very popular with this anarchist mindset of just being so different and so out there that only adults are going to really gel with this, even though stuff like Smiling Friends is very popular with like most crowds. And I'm sure folks who aren't really supposed to be watching it but are going to watch it, because what are you going to do? You can't just age lock program block and such. I'm glad that Adult Swim is okay. I'm not okay with how badly it's treated its creatives in the past. And now, like, I still love it. And I love the shows that they're making and releasing so far. Like, I was still a huge fan of Royal Crackers, and I'm going through season 2 right now. But it is very much kind of what feels like a sausage fest, a boys' club, per se.
You're not wrong.
It doesn't help when they save Tuca and Birdie and now only to cancel it because, listen, they didn't greenlight other things, and in order to do that, cancel Tuca and Birdie. We got to get past this notion of show 1 got canceled so show 2 could keep going and or exist. This happens more than not all the time. Like, this is what happened with The Critic, with the SNL actor who plays him, John Lovitz.
Oh, yeah, John Lovitz.
When it was greenlit and put into production, the people in charge of Fox were very much like, yeah, we're down. And then when the new regime came in, they're like, what is this? I don't like it. Cancel it. And then it got sent over to, I think, ABC, or it might be the other way around. Well, anyway, the point is, the people who then came into power at one studio hated it, canceled it. They shipped it to another station that loved it, but then the people in power came in and they hated it, so they canceled it. Huzzah. it's a messy production history with the animation industry. Like, all this stuff happens all the time. And no, most shows don't get canceled to keep funding the stuff that is still making them money. A lot of things can happen, from the micro to the big wigs on top, causing things to fall apart.
Exactly.
So, in a way, its own miracle that something like Smiling Friends is able to exist, be popular, and as of right now, Zaslav isn't looking for more money to buy a fifth yacht to hide out on this coming fall when the animation strike happens. Smiling Friends represents a very specific creative mindset. Whereas folks who worked on stuff like Flintstones, Family Guy, American Dad, The Simpsons, and such were, grew up on sitcom culture, this show represents the young adults that grew up on mid 2000s to now internet culture and spent probably way too much time against their parents' discretions on Newgrounds. And I'm not
I
just saying that to paint a picture of what kind of show Smiling Friends is. There are literal YouTubers, YouTube animators, and creatives from Newgrounds all throughout this show, and it's 2 seasons right now.
I think that's actually kind of a cool thing that a lot of that early 2000s internet culture has, I guess, in a way ascended to Adult Swim, but at the same time, those two worlds kind of were rising up around the same time.
Yeah, exactly. It's a weird thing to think about because you're so used to seeing shows that were obviously greenlit to be the next Family Guy, or it was just some celebrity's passion project to make something, and the studio is like, we'll give you the bare minimum to make a season and dump it, because then halfway through they're like, oh, this is not going to be good at all. Like what happened to that Jonah Hill animated show that was frankly awful. Just not a good thing.
Didn't it only last like 6 episodes before like, no, we can't do this anymore?
Like they greenlit it for 7 episodes, and then because of how long animation takes, that whole show's existence was a nightmare, because normally TV channels are like, and studios are like, well, we got to fill out at least this number of weeks. So let's make a new show, hope it hits it out of the park until we get to the thing that actually makes us money for the next seasonal drop and such. So 12, 13 episodes, maybe 22. And then that show only got 7 episodes because they had no faith in the project. And considering what the end result was, it was something that wasn't going to work, no matter how stylized and celebrity driven it was going to be anyway. But with Smiling Friends, there was almost a chance that it may have gotten the Zaslav treatment, because I think it was on April 1st of 2021. They released all 8 episodes in one night as a sense of, like, it was their April Fool's gag for that year. It's like, hey, here's this new show. Now we're going to dump all 8 episodes in one night, and then it's all going to be on Max the next day. And it was just like, oh no, that's not a good sign. Because when a channel burns through a season, they want to get rid of it. They want to justify it by saying, hey, we released all the episodes. We just did it during the middle of the day when no one's watching.
And in typical WB fashion, something amazing happened where it seems like they didn't know what they had because, not to get too far ahead, but the show became kind of a massive success.
And that's what was weird about this time period, because after it became such a success, Adult Swim really just said, hey, you know what, those shows that we were going to use for like Cartoon Network and such, put them on Adult Swim. We need content. People are watching Adult Swim. And that's why we have My Adventures with Superman on Adult Swim, when it's not really the same kind of audience. Even though, hey, it's still doing well and we're getting a third season, so I'm happy about that. Same with Smiling Friends. So, Smiling Friends is essentially a show that's is partially taking the piss out of children show like premises. I mean, you see the name of the show, Smiling Friends, and then you see what they do, which is be this, as Charlie puts it, a charity organization that helps people smile. They go into these outlandish adventures due to it being a baby of 2005 onward Newgrounds and internet culture. You don't quite know what's going to happen or what the episode is going to be about. In fact, the show doesn't really have an overarching premise or story in some regards. Like, we're so used to now shows being like limited series or they have overarching plots. But Smiling Friends is a story of the week like thing with maybe a continuity tidbit here and there. But for the most part, no episode will lead into the next one.
Which is oddly refreshing for the modern Adult Swim shows. It's really just 11 minutes each episode of just the most absurd mixed media and the wildest comic sensibilities.
That's the thing about the show, what I like about it. The animation is out there. And it being part of a bento box production, which once again shows the problem isn't bento box. It's whatever the production pipeline is why most of their shows don't look great. Because this show isn't just 2D animation, not just the typical Adult Swim animation aesthetic. There's stop motion or CGI that's made to mimic stop motion, different art styles, live action elements, motion capture elements.
Rotoscoping.
You don't know what you're going to get until you watch the episode itself. A good example of this would be, I think my favorite episode from season 2 is when Alan goes to get paper clips and a simple task sends him through the ringer of some of the most well choreographed action and comedy that I've seen this year from one episode. And it also makes me want to see more episodes with him. Make this like the Family Guy chicken fight with Peter and what have you. Make it every time they make a Alan focus episode, the bombastic nature of it just keeps escalating. And all because his landlord, as he puts it, I just wanted to know if you wanted to hang out, smoke weed all day while filling our bellies with diet soda and playing Burnout Revenge on the PS2. This show is out there, man.
It is. Something I kind of noticed right away as I was rewatching season 1 and season 2, there is one consistent pattern where the 4th episode is the Halloween special, and then the last one is like a Christmas-ish parody.
Oh man, the one in season 1 where Charlie goes to hell and meets the devil, who is voiced by James Rolfe, aka the angry video game nerd, and is then saved by God, played by the late great Gilbert Gottfried.
Yes.
Perfect casting for if you're going to have someone play God. As we talk about this show, it's going to sound like, man, this sounds like a hot mess. And in some regards, it is. But that's the point. If you watched any Newgrounds animation, it was very much the age of experimental comedy. Sometimes it was shock jock and edgy humor, and then sometimes it was just, let's be weird. And if you remember any part of that time period, or if you grew up during that time period where Newgrounds was the go-to place for animators like the guy who created Salad Fingers or Ego Raptor, you would know their stuff was very different than what we were getting in mainstream comedy during that time period.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They do bring on these Newgrounds veterans to both be characters, like mostly one-off characters that you won't see in any of the other episodes, but also animate, because you could tell Happy Harry, the guy who made, the famous Saturday Morning Watchmen parody, among many other stuff like Starbarians. And he not only does voice work for it, but you could, in a few episodes, you can find his name in the credits, especially the one where they make fun of the Rankin Bass Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I think that might be one of my favorite episodes from season one.
Another reoccurring thing that the show really likes to do is, no matter the shape of the character or their design, anytime they have a finger that comes towards the screen, it turns into like a realistic hand that like they traced over and then painted like it was a 90s like Class B Supo show, like the Rugrats and such. It's so fun to watch this show because you're never quite ready for what they're going to do. And yes, I could say this is a show about nothing, where they're mostly focusing on jokes on top of jokes on top of jokes. And that is the case, but it also has a few episodes where they have a bit of commentary, and I guess you could say they put the words of the current zeitgeist into form, especially with the Gwimbly episode where they try to help out a PlayStation 1 mascot who is pretty much like a mix of Crash Bandicoot and Spyro before Activision made them non-existent things to care about.
Oh, yeah.
And it, of course, pokes fun at the fact that most video game industry CEOs and most CEOs, I mean, the movie and TV industry, are the worst. They're not really there to help make art and to help make new and creative things. They want to know what something's going to cost and if it's going to make them a lot of money.
The most evergreen line in the entire show. That's my IP to sit on and do nothing with.
Yeah. I can't let them make another Gwendly game. It's always the frustrating factor of these CEOs. It's like, okay, you now own this, but you've done diddly squat with it. So how about you give it to someone who will? It's like, but then we won't own it. And it's just like, but you're not doing anything with it. And then they're like, yeah, but what if I want to and it could make me money? It never gets tiring or exhausting. And I know a lot of people really want to bring up the presidential debate episode, especially after this past week and the news that happened as we are recording this. Fun times. Not really. But again, animation takes a lot of time. This episode was going to happen no matter what was going to happen in the political landscape, because it's just, like Mike says, an evergreen topic of, we have a bumbling candidate on one side and a sociopathic madman on the other, and they're not really the best things for us. And I hope people aren't going to be like, well, don't get political, man. It's like, man, they wouldn't have made this episode, or art wouldn't get made in general, if someone didn't have something to say.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that's why this episode has just become more prescient. It's not only is it still just insanely hilarious, but it also kind of happens to reflect the current election year that we're in. Just it makes it hit that much harder.
Yeah, it's not pleasant. Like I said, but those are like a few episodes of like these two seasons so far. Most of the time, they're just making fun of stuff like, what if there was an evil smiling friends? Well, it's making fun of edgelords who try to act tough and are all nihilistic, nothing matters anymore, and then realize that, oh, they almost died, and they're deeply afraid of that concept. Charlie and Pim are very funny lead characters. You have the overly optimistic one, and then you have the more cynical one, as they try to help out folks, like a man who is constantly, well, content warning, suicide reference, a guy who is constantly on the edge of shooting himself until he finds purpose and joy in life again, which is killing those little,
Bliblies.
yeah, bliblies, which just remind me of the nerds from the Willy Wonka candy.
Oh my God, you're I'm pretty sure that's exactly the reference they were pulling, but those bliblies is like are the perfect example of the kind of out there stupid nonsense humor that every single time will crack me up.
It's so funny because you're not expecting Alan to find these little guys. He's looking for a mouse that took his cheese. And then not only finds a random guy just sitting in his wall watching on a computer, but finds those little guys, and then it just becomes worse here on out. The boss character, he is partly has something going on behind the scenes, but is also a constant parody of like those children's show company bosses where they're like, oh no, this guy needs smiling. Can you guys go like help him smile or something like that? And then crank to 11 for him to be someone who may go on a killing spree at one point because of the manifesto that he hides in his desk. And of course, the little moments at the end of the election episode where he's just like it's not going to happen, but if something does happen, I am going to take care of it. And it's like, whoa, what do you have going on, buddy? It is a refreshing show to watch because not only does it feel like no other show out right now, it's now setting a new precedent of what we may see in the future, especially with some of those shows that got revealed during the Annecy Film Festival from Warner Brothers Discovery. Like, of course, we got our Creature Commando and whatever, but there's like this one show about four bodybuilding brothers and their bodybuilding dad going on a journey of healing and self-reflection. And it just looks like a show that would be perfectly within the world of Smiling Friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to see how this has now shaped a new era of Adult Swim, or in some regards, I guess you can argue that it's a return to form because it's a much more polished version of what they were doing back in the day with C Lab and Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Oh yeah, and shows like home movies.
Man, at home movies. I haven't seen that in forever.
It's been a minute since I've seen it too.
Because a lot of the times early on, or at least in the early 2000s, a lot of Adult Swim, like I said earlier, was reliant on Family Guy reruns, all of Seth MacFarlane stuff, but also showing stuff like, I think it was called like Baby Blues and Mission Hill.
Yep.
And Baby Blues was also really good, super charming, and very distinct from The Simpsons. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to stand on its own legs, but I would love to talk about that show sometime in the future. Like, it works. It's not just misogynistic hyper-violence galore that kind of took over the latter era of Adult Swim with stuff like Stroker and Hoop and Super Jail. I mean, Stroker and Hoop was more of a parody of 70s cop shows, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Super Jail. I don't know if I ever finished that show, but it like that first episode is just batshit.
It's very much one of those shows that you could say started the zeitgeist of the weird, absurd internet stuff because a lot of internet animation was also hyper violent. So it's just interesting to see where, like, once you think back to what Adult Swim was and what it is now, and see it kind of come full circle with Smiling Friends. And it helps that the show is not only just a homage to that one era of the internet, but they do give the people who shaped Newgrounds appearances in the show. I know we just talked about it, but like the shrimp character is voiced by the guy who made and voiced Salad Fingers. The founder of Newgrounds makes a cameo in the first episode. And anytime you see a pseudo motion capture rotoscoped character, you'll probably know who that is. I mean, if that's who I think it is. Joel Haver. If you've seen his like weird motion capture animation, then you'll recognize his work all over the show when it pops up. Even in the episode where Charlie and Pym help out the mad scientist guy,
Yep, that's
his brother is in that style, which is why the scientist brother, his design shifts to that weird CGI motion capture thing.
I thought I recognized him.
Like, look up the Lanky Kong listens to the DK rap for the first time video, and you'll see what I mean. I mean, the only problem with the credits and how they're handled in this show is like they go by so fast and the different colored backgrounds like flicker, so it's hard to see and pinpoint like who the Newgrounds alumni and veterans were. I mean, outside of just the obvious one, like Happy Harry being in like the evil Smiling Friends episode and in the election episode is one of the worms. Like, hold on a second. Do frogs eat worms? Or just that episode where he's just like, Mr. Frog, why are you so evil? You got 1 second to respond. Well, hello. You're like, time's up, and you're wrong. But I will say, the love and craft that goes into Smiling Friends doesn't always work out. I mean, some of the references are a little obscure for me, only because I was never a fan of this person or I never knew about this person. But the episode where the boss is getting married to the daughter of Satan, I think that's by far and away my least favorite episode.
I don't love it, except for the fact that Erica Lindbeck, who has like a bunch of different recurring appearances, but she is the voice of Brittany, and that's really the highlight of that episode.
It was my least favorite episode because it retreads through some jokes that they previously did, though I do find it funny that this show is constantly threatening the audience with a fifth smiling friend, but it never happens. I mean, I loved it the first time because it is such a jab at when shows go a little long in the tooth. They try to introduce someone
that nobody ends up liking.
Yeah, it's like that's why that recent Fairly Odd Parents revival works, because it continues the plot, but in no way references all of the later half garbage that was introduced into that show because Nickelodeon was unsure if they wanted to cancel or renew that show. Like here, they'll just say they brought in a new person and then never bring them up again. I loved the Smormu gag. That's probably my favorite gag of season 1. Just because they're like, if you want Smormu to be the new fifth smiling friend, please say, I really, really want Smormu, and text it to this number. Or if you say, I really, really, really don't want Smormu, text it to this number. And then it's like, and we listened, and now Smormu is a permanent part of the Smiling Friends, only for him to die at the very end of the credits.
Perfect gag.
That's the thing about those in-credit gags. I had to look it up before we started the episode because I was like, what is with these last-minute in memoriam jokes? And it's mostly parodies and tributes to the people who guest starred on the show as a character. It's just fun. It's like a new flavor of adult animation that, listen, if we're going to keep getting comedies, I'd rather the comedies go in the way of this, Digman, or Royal Crackers, where it's not just a show with mediocre comedy trying to be shocking and mean, only for it to just forget that it needs to be funny. Like a lot of the, Brickleberry stuff and Paradise PD, which seems to finally be done
Oh, thank God.
because the creators behind those shows, Netflix basically cut ties with them, but they cut ties with like everyone in animation right now. So it's like a blessing and a curse. There's just not a lot of stuff to talk about with Smiling Friends due to its erratic nature of like one episode being about the boss marrying the daughter of the devil, or in the next episode, him and the boss go to
Spam something. They speak Spanish, which is like just some nonsense gibberish language.
it reminds me a lot of, I think they were like called the Clockwork Fruit on Newgrounds. Very old reference that I'm pulling from.
Spamtopia.
Yeah, Spamtopia. And just that gargled computer speak nonsense is so just out there. I'm amazed that Adult Swim allowed a show like this to exist, because a lot of times I just don't know what to think about them, because on one hand they are willing to do stuff like fund the Boondocks series that is animated by Studio Mir, and it's one of the best looking shows that have ever been on Adult Swim. But then they'll do something like 12-ounce mouse and it looks so dirt cheap, which is the point. But also, I think there's a limit to how many people are going to sit through something like that.
Yeah.
Where if Smiling Friends wasn't as funny as it was, or it hits a point to where the zaniness becomes predictable, then that show's going to have a problem.
I don't think it's going to have that problem because, like I pointed out, there's already a little bit of a pattern with certain episodes, but even then, they still manage to keep things fresh and unpredictable. One of the more underrated episodes from the first season is the Smiling Friends go to Brazil, which you think is going to be like your stereotypical vacation episode. But then it turns out that Pim forgot to book the hotel rooms. The whole episode is just them arguing at the airport.
That was a funny episode. At first, I was like, I don't get this episode. I fell for the much more appealing image of the show in my head with them going to Brazil. But they make it to Brazil, but they never actually go through Brazil, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So it's taking the piss out of stuff like that, where a lot of ABC shows were like, you're on our channel, you have to do an episode where you go to Disneyland. That's not up for debate. That's part of the contract within the fine print. Here, they would very much just get stuck in traffic or in one of the infamously long lines at Disneyland. And that would be the whole episode. I think another episode I really like is the Mr. Frog episode, because it, of course, introduces the most unhinged character of the Smiling Friends continuity, who's one of the few to make it through to the second season, and how it takes petty jabs at executives who think they know better. Oh, the Aliens episode, where
yes,
the theremin reveal made me laugh, because Charlie is so done with that whole situation, only to see the theremin and be like, yo, man, my uncle had one of these when he was in the band, and it's not really an alien contact machine, only for the thing to actually contact an alien, only for those aliens that abducted them to get abducted themselves, and for it to be a whole episode about, or like playing up the whole parody of, like, don't do bad things to hang out with cool people, because people are usually bad folks. It's like what my mom says, don't get involved with bad people. They'll make you do things that you don't want to do. There's just so much to this show. And it being such a visual wonder for adult animation in a time period where we are slowly starting to see more diverse looking adult shows is wonderful. Because a lot of people like to think every adult animated show looks like the Brickleberry or Paradise PD thing, when that's not really true at all. Like throughout Adult Swim's life, even before they got stuff like the Unicorn Warriors Eternal and My Adventures with Superman, yes, they've all had like the same vibe of Aqua Teen Hunger Force and the same cheap feel of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, but they all looked different.
They each had their own design philosophies and their own art styles, similar comic sensibilities, but still their own variations. Very little are.
You can't compare and contrast them a lot of the times. They are going to be very distinct from one another outside of maybe some comic sensibilities.
Right.
Like, I'm looking at the You May Also Like section of the Max app, and you could see Robot Chicken, The Boondocks, Moral Oral, Super Jail, and YOLO Silver Destiny in one row, and they look nothing alike. Yes, Robot Chicken and Moral Oral are stop motion shows, but Moral Oral is making fun of something very specific.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, oh, let's make a funny stop motion adult show. It's let's make fun of the old, I think it's David and Goliath show. And then you'll get something like the Boondocks, which, again, amazing animation with some of its absurd comedy and commentary. And then Robot Chicken, for the most part, is still very much, let's take your 80s nostalgic property and do something slightly cringy and tedious with it. But sometimes we'll do something very funny with the action figures and such. Yeah, I think Adult Swim is in a very odd place right now. There's stuff that I wish that they didn't cancel, like the Venture Brothers. But I'm also happy that they have stuff like My Adventure with Superman, Royal Crackers, Smiling Friends, and just what they're making now. It makes me excited to see what they're going to do next because I'm rooting for those creatives.
Same. Before we end this, I want to make sure I shout out the names of the creators behind Smiling Friends, Michael Cusack and Zach Hadel. Cusack also worked on YOLO. That was the other show that premiered. I want to dive into one of these days because just kind of a big fan of Cusack's just absurd sense of humor. And I want to see how that was delivered in a different series.
Yeah, honestly, they do a good job. My one complaint about Smiling Friends, it's kind of a sausage fest, mostly male characters and such. Like, it's funny and it's well executed, but it is in front of and behind the scenes a guys club, which is unfortunately kind of the thing that makes Adult Swim a tad tedious. So, as much as it progresses and brings a new life to Adult Swim, I wish it wasn't so guy centric. Like, have some funny female characters or something. They introduce that Glip and Charlie have girlfriends, but you never see them. And they don't really have much personalities to them. It's odd, but that's really the one major complaint that I have for Smiling Friends.
I see where you're coming from. And as much as I love Erica Lindbeck, she can't be the only one who gets to voice like all of these different characters. There's got to be a little bit more female representation.
I love the show, but it feels like it has one foot in the future and one foot in the past. And it's only going to feel weirder and more apparent when we're going to get stuff like a revival of regular show, the continuation of Rick and Morty, and then Adventure Time getting a movie, a preschool show, and another Fiona and Cake season. Where, I mean, like maybe because all these other shows have such diverse casts that Smiley Friends doesn't feel like it needs to, but that's always going to be a part that sticks out. But otherwise, I don't really have much to complain about. Smiling Friends reinvigorates adult animation alongside other shows that we've talked about, like My Adventures with Superman, Unicorn Warriors Eternal, Primal, and like Scavenger's Reign, which is on Netflix. Please, for the love of God, greenlight another season.
Yes, please.
At least another season to close it out on. I want to see more stuff like Fired on Mars also. Just like keep growing this diverse range of shows, Adult Swim. Like if you can limit the sausage fest factor, you'll be okay. This is a weird episode because we're talking about a weird show and just a weird time period for animation to be in right now.
This is a weird time, but it's also an exciting time, and I'm hoping for the best.
Same. And hopefully this animation strike, if it happens, helps even more new life to the world of animation and the executives stop screwing over everyone. But we will have to see. Next time, we will be talking about the double feature of Studio Panox, The Imaginary. We'll have to talk about how many imaginary movies there are this year.
Oh, yeah.
What a weird trend. And the newest movie in the Despicable Me franchise, Despicable Me 4.
A pretty interesting double feature, but more on that next time. Cameron, where can everyone find you online?
You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky and Instagram at Cam's Eye View. I have a website called camseyeView.biz where I review animated films and shows from around the world called The Other Side of Animation. I also have a Patreon at patreon.com/CamsEyeView. That's where you can find me.
And you guys can find me on various social media sites at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterbox.com/Coach K42. And you could follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and that place at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser. Consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/Renegade Pop Culture. Listen to all of our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Animation. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.